goal is to create a spotlight on the Lagos startup ecosystem. And for us, one of the key things is collaboration. It's community driven by community. We have loads of hubs. We'll be hosting events during the week itself. We'll probably stop by after the whole session to give you a rundown of what is happening during the week itself. We partner with so many hubs from the best. And we also have lots of amazing people all around here. We have a special guest from Texters at the Sonia project. We also have a keynote speaker, Mr. Ike. He was apparently here the first year of the Lagos Startup Week itself. And we hope you do have a nice time throughout the week itself. And thank you very much. You're welcome.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Hi.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Hi.
Okay, great. It's amazing to see you guys here. At the start of an amazing week, so much to look forward to, and there's no better day to start than today, right? We have an amazing roster of speakers, thought leaders, captains of industry, right? This is, as he said, a celebration of what the future holds for Nigeria. Our key industries, right? Looking at these sectors in a new light, right? We need to speak to people who have a different perspective, and that's why we're here. So thank you again, guys, for spending your evening with us, and we do hope that you will join us for the entire week. Okay? Great. All right. Let's move to our first keynote. I would like to invite Eze, an angel investor, a board member for eTransact, User, Help, Pay, and Elifab. Did I say that right? Elifab, great, okay. Now these are cutting edge startups, right? Eze is one of the foremost people who understands that bridge between Silicon Valley and Nigeria. And he's done a lot to really foster the relations between both. So we have so much to learn from him. Welcome again, Ike.
You know, when you get an introduction like that, you feel like you need to park the Red Sea now. So thank you very much for the introduction. It's great to be here. I was actually marveling with Olumide that 2 years ago I was sitting as a judge, I think somewhere around there, and he sort of was saying this is the first year he looks for great things to happen. And I'm glad to see that 2 years on, that he's actually achieved a lot of the things that he's looked to achieve and has built this event a lot larger than it was then. So I think this is a great turnout to start out the week. The expectation that we have is that turnout will continue to be as good at all the other functions. But today I was roped in. The reason I say roped in is I don't do keynotes. Keynotes require preparation. I like easy. So this is a little bit of preparation. And the reason is because I try not to do canned, boring things, to try to explain some things that I've learned along the way. So with that said, the discussion today is about, can you guys see this? Yeah. You have to excuse us, we're partial to dark colors and dark backgrounds. Not that we're morbid, it's just our theme. So if we need to dim these lights, please do so you can see the background. So as we do that, let me just talk a little bit about me so it kind of sets the stage as to who I am, what I do, a little bit of background as well. That way you can, you know when you hear someone speak and you say, what qualifies you to give advice? So hopefully I'll qualify myself. You listen to what I have to say. I started out as an engineer, mechanical engineer. I worked telecom, with AT&T. Then moved to Bechtel and did some pretty advanced space and systems projects. So responsible for dismantling ICBMs, nuclear missiles in Russia and in the former Soviet Union. We built ground satellite stations for Iridium, which is probably the first mass market multi-launch satellite vehicle. So kind of like what SpaceX is doing really well. So we did that a while ago. And then I did my first startup, which is fintech. Now you go from that industry to fintech, there's a lot to learn. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We built that company, it was the fintech, sold the company, got the chance to do business school. Spent a little bit of time in consulting in New York. Then left that, realized that I liked technology companies, I liked startups, I liked to build things. So we ended up investing in an online gaming platform, which we built and sold over 3 years. Then we did another fintech, built and sold that over 6 years. Then I decided it was time to come back to Nigeria. I was very fortunate to work with Africa Capital Alliance, a large billion-dollar fund here. They have a portfolio company called eTransact. I came in as Executive Director of Strategy and Corporate Development. I also run the mobile money business. I sit on the board, and I'm an active angel investor. So Beta Ventures is our investment vehicle. It's a US-based VC fund, my partner and I, small fund. We do seed stage deals, we like tech enabled, we like early stage, we work really hard with entrepreneurs. There's some entrepreneurs that we've advised for almost 20 months, and before we ever made an investment. So our objective, grow the ecosystem, work with people in the ecosystem to expand it. If we get to do a deal, great. If we don't, at least we contributed to it. All right, so quick agenda. I'll talk to you a little bit about vision and then 3 questions. The vision thing is a little bit tricky because when you talk to somebody about vision, what you usually end up having is some statement. We plan to blah, 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 blah. And then it follows with mission. Our mission is to, we actually like to peel the onion back and actually try to figure out what you're trying to do with the vision side of the company. If we figure that out, we get a sense of the types of entrepreneurs that we're dealing with. Questions, the 3 questions we sort of think are helpful as you think about your vision. So what do you think vision? This might be sort of the picture that comes to mind. You're way above the clouds, you can see everything, you know what's happening. So it's one perspective of a vision. The thing about vision statements is that they need to be more than just 50 comments as to what you think you're going to create. So you sort of take a look at Merriam-Webster and you say, define vision for me. What do you get? You say, unusual discernment or foresight is vision. The big question you ask for young entrepreneurs is, there needs to be some sort of index value or some sort of plane that gives you this insight. And a lot of people don't have that experience. So how do you gain that experience to get that insight as a young entrepreneur to build something? The other way I look at it is from sports. Don't worry, this picture has a reason that's out there. So this is the great one. This is Wayne Gretzky. He plays hockey. Well, he used to. He's now 56, so he doesn't play too much of that anymore. Hockey, very fast-paced sport, very physical. You get to lose teeth sometimes. You get to break bones. A little bit like soccer in that the objective is to score as many goals as possible. So Wayne, the little red thing that you see circled there is a puck. So this puck blazes across the screen. If you ever watch hockey on a TV, it's very hard to follow the game if you can't see the puck. So they asked Wayne Gretzky many years ago, what makes you great? And he said, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it has been. That's vision for the game. That's what we sort of see, and we translate that to how we look at visionary entrepreneurs as well. is they're really focused and they operate in industries where industries are going to be versus where they currently are. If you're doing something that's apparent and anyone can do it, good luck. If you're doing something that's not and you get a head start, it's a fantastic place to be. So when we work with entrepreneurs, we actually try to press them. And we want to get an idea of what thing have they seen, where is this vision coming from, is it industry, is it based upon just their experiences and what they've done. But we like to understand how they see the world. If I as an investor could tell you what the world is, I could probably find an entrepreneur that would build that company. But we prefer our entrepreneurs to sell us the dream, tell us what the world would be like so we can fund them and go forward there. So, here's one of the things that we think about with vision and entrepreneurs. It's, what do you know that no one else knows? What is the insight that you have about a certain market that no one else has? And you find that this is sort of one of the key questions that a lot of entrepreneurs can't answer. So you might get someone that's doing an e-commerce play and they say, I'm going to do e-commerce, and you say, what is there about what you're building that is unique? What is that you've seen? So I decided, you know what, let's do an exercise. I ruined it. So there's this young guy who has this little guy called Justin Cam. And Justin Cam had this thing called Justin TV. He wore a baseball hat, affixed the camera to his hat, piped it through the network, and he just played or recorded a video, I guess played, stream, a video of just his daily life. So you go to Justin TV or Justin.tv, you watch what he's doing. So after a while you figure out the number of people that want to watch Justin's life unfold, limited. So Justin recruits a woman called Justine, and it's called iJustine.com. And she had a site now. And of course, early days of the internet, you find that iJustine.com pulled a lot more than Justin TV because of men being on the internet. First insight is that Khan realized that people like to watch different people, not just him. First insight, key insight. Hence, he moved to the next logical step, which is that key insight. And the insight is, I can now build a platform where each person doesn't have to push traffic to their own respective websites, but they can all come to one platform and view different people can stream. Key insight one. The second insight, after they did that, a lot of people started streaming their days. You know, Justin Khan thought that the business was selling them hats with video and everything that you could stream on. So some people bought it, some people sort of hacked their own thing. Second key insight was that a lot of traffic was going to people that wore these cams and streamed their video play. Not really something you'd think about, that people want to watch other people play games. But that is the second key insight. With that, they went ahead and just segmented that off, killed the Justin TV brand, and created Twitch. And Twitch is an environment that's really focused in on gamers and people that record their gameplay or stream their gameplay. And extremely successful. And Amazon picked them up for $970 million, so just slightly less than $1 billion. And that's how the Justin TV and the insights got to build a really good company. Second question, who's with you? Even if you're not a Bartha man, you know the guys that are up here. And you know the roles that they play. Everyone on your team has a role. You need to figure out what that role is. So back to my e-commerce example, you sort of see an entrepreneur that says, I want to do an e-commerce play for shoes. So the first question you ask is, do you sell shoes? And they go, no, I thought shoes would be kind of nice. You say, okay, is there anyone on your team that does merchandising? How do you get merchandise? We'll think about it. Well, what about supply chain? How do you handle supply chain? Like, we don't really know that, but we're two really cool guys that know how to code. So the coding is not the issue, it's the company. You have to build a company. So you need to figure out who's on your team. So the team is identification of gaps. How do you figure out what you need on your team? Who's playing what role? The other thing you need to take a look at is how do you find them? You have to understand that once you've figured out a gap, it needs to be filled. Whether you're getting the talent locally or you're outsourcing, but you need to fill that gap because it remains a glaring hole in the profile of the company. Communication. So you've crafted this great vision. People love the vision, but you find that a lot of entrepreneurs don't communicate it. So they can't tell people where that promised land is, but you need to sell the promised land. That's where people want to get to. Because ultimately, a lot of people do startups because of the challenge. They like to be challenged. You're not going to pay them the most, but you can challenge them the most. The idea is that it's a dream to build something that they were unable to build before, something that they never thought could be built, and the vision is the driver of that dream. And you have to be able to sell it, and you have to be able to communicate it, and you also have to be able to challenge them. And then, of course, you need to make them happy. One thing that you'll find is there's something that some people on my teams have always found out, is that I ask them a few questions. There are two key questions that I ask them. One, what kind of equity? Because it's the equity discussion that you need to have up front. And the second question is, what's your pain point? The pain point is a cash pain point. There's a certain amount of cash that somebody cannot live with less than. And you find that people can get jobs elsewhere doing lots of great things, and they're being paid 2, 3, 4 times as much as you can pay them. But if you can satisfy all these things and figure out a way to make them happy, they actually will be along with you for that journey. Now the next slide I have to sort of preface, because it's a touchy one with entrepreneurs. You know when folks say the problem is not, it's not you, it's me. You have to look within yourself, because startups need to ask themselves this key question. Can you lead this company? Can you lead this company? I know everyone thinks, how hard can it be? Oh, it's hard. It's hard. It's hard juggling the many things that a company is required to do. So it's one of the things that we work really hard on with entrepreneurs, is that you need to figure out what you're good at, what you're lacking. And essentially, this question comes down to probably 3 scenarios, or maybe 4. Scenario 1, you can lead the company, you're prepped, everything's ready. Scenario 2, you think you can lead the company, you can't, everything is screwed, company goes to shit. Cameras go. Company goes bad. Scenario 3, you know you can't lead the company, but you want to be able to lead an organization in the future. And this is where I think the choices that entrepreneurs make are key. You need to find the right people to surround you, the right advisors, and especially the right investors. An investor can help you grow into that CEO you want to become by using the network to get you the advice and the advisors and the support that you need to get there. Or 3, you kind of relinquish and you say, don't want to be the CEO, better person to do this than me, I'll step down, do what I do best. So here's an example of 3 companies that we know and you all know as well. Facebook, at the end of the day, anyone will tell you that Mark Zuckerberg runs product, he runs strategy. He doesn't run the operations of the company. He knows he doesn't do that well. So he has sort of seconded that out to Sheryl Sandberg. And she does a fantastic job, and there's a happy symbiotic relationship that they have there. When you look at Google, Bryn and Paige decided with their investors that it made sense to go hire an outside CEO.
with the mind towards them developing to become CEOs at some point, and Page ultimately took over Alphabet and now runs them. Twitter, that's more like the comedy of errors with the number of people that were in and out of that shop. But ultimately, Dick Costolo ended up running that shop. And at the end of the day, you sort of think about it and you realize that the founder has returned, or one of the founders have returned. So I think for us, we kind of say that you need to know about yourself. You need to be very truthful, factual, and just embrace it. If you're not that guy or gal, you can surround yourself with people that can help you get there. But you have to realize that, for all intents and purposes, you're all pretty young. There are people that work 20 years to learn how to lead an organization, and you're supposed to know how to lead an organization between startup pitch 1 and Series A. That's a very short amount of time. So pick your team wisely, pick your advisors wisely, and especially pick your investors wisely. Recap. Number 1, I'd suggest that folks operate in markets that are coming, where the industry is going to be. It takes a lot longer for you to get to your destination, and you don't want your destination to be a declining industry by the time you get there, or an industry that's being replaced, or a part of an industry that's being replaced. You want your industry to be the growth engine of tomorrow, and you want to have a pole position as you start that out. The 3 questions that I was talking about. 1, what do you know that no one else knows about the industry? I think it's a key question. It's one of the questions that we try to ferret out. Of course we don't. Look, my first startup, what we did was credit reports. So we did credit reports online. It was the dawn of the commercial internet, so internet wasn't big. Credit reports, you had to sort of write a letter to the credit bureau. It came in 7 days in the US. So the insight was speed. The other one that wasn't quite apparent is that the country is carved up, US is carved up in geographic exclusive zones. So with the internet, we had sort of this very thin window where we could define the internet as a non-geographic zone, so we got coverage for the entire nation. And then the third thing was security. We had figured out a way to authenticate who you are online without having seen you. So these are the things that weren't apparent to us at the time as we invented these things. But they were those things that we knew that the industry didn't know. We ultimately sold that company, and 3 years after we sold it, it was about $1 billion in revs. So it scales very quickly from 0 to $1 billion in about 7 years. Who's with you? Your team. Very key. You need to fill in your holes. If you don't have the gaps filled in, at least you have to be able to identify what these gaps are and figure out how to fill them. But identification of the gaps are probably more important than filling the gaps, because people can help you fill them. And the third and touchy question is, can you lead? And do you want to lead? Or do you want to learn how to lead? But whatever permutation that question occurs in, it's one that should be answered, and should be answered pretty early. So in wrapping up, the next slide will sort of give you some parting words from somebody who has a lot of vision and has made his own fair share of mistakes. But I think as you commence on this journey, or you continue the journey towards building your companies, it's to remember that you're young, the world is your oyster, and the only thing you can do is just dream. Imagine the great things you can build, and build it. Thank you.
Great. Can we have another round of applause for him, please? I love 2 things he said, right? What do you know that others don't know, right? Again, he mentioned that he likes to sit and listen to the entrepreneur, right? You guys need to be the experts and masters of your own domain.
right? People could always tell you about what you're trying to solve, but why is it important to solve that pain point? What is it about that pain point that really resonates with you, right? I really, really like that. I also am a big believer in advisors, right? In mentorship, right? Why make the same mistakes that others have made before, right? But sometimes when we start out, right, we really think we know all the answers, and our first ideas are usually the ones that we hold on to, and some of these things are the things that we really need to relearn, right? And so on that note, speaking about mentorship and advising and accelerating, we'd like to have our second keynote speaker, Ahmed Bayram, right? Techstars Middle East and Africa Regional Partner and Josser Managing Director. Ahmed is a social engineer, collaborative economist expert. He's also the head of Techstars, which is a worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed with a portfolio of over 1,000 plus companies, a total market cap of $80 billion, and operates in 150 countries. So let's welcome Ahmed. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, just not supposed to be a keynote speak, it's just like a friendly warm welcome that I wanted to say to you. Unfortunately, I'm not the head of Techstars. I do wish with all those billions, maybe in the future. I'm just a regional manager that manage the whole region in Middle East and Africa. So what we do with Techstars is like global networks that help those entrepreneurs succeed, just people like you, in everywhere they are, from inspiration to IPO, through a variety of programs. You are now here in one of the programs that we provide, which is Startup Week. I don't know if you heard about Startup Weekend, which is another event that we try to help, and we try to build a model of accelerator programs and all over the world with working with big companies to help you accelerate your business in a 3-month programs. So far we have 31 accelerator programs in various locations. And all of that starts with only one vision. The vision is that you don't have to be in Silicon Valley to build a business. The vision is believing that entrepreneurship can exist everywhere in the world, that you can establish a business no matter where you are. My first start was in Damascus, in Syria, that I consider to be the worst place to be in Earth so far because of the wars and what's happening there. I born and raised and been living there for the past 3 years before I moved to Silicon Valley, and then I moved to there. And what I found, there's no difference. We always hear about the Silicon Valley when it's actually happening there, but there is actually the real here, which also can be able to do it. For that reason, and that's believed, we start to bringing the accelerator program models. We don't have an accelerator program in Silicon Valley. We have it in 31 different locations, and we're trying to expand more and more with the time, but we're not based in Silicon Valley. So you don't have to be there to build the business, and that's what we believe. We work hard with entrepreneurs just like you to help them achieve their problems, achieve their visions, to solve the problems that they need. And this is what we're looking for, people who want to do the change they do believe in. We're here to meet you guys in person because we strongly believe in the legacy ecosystem and the potential it has to grow internationally, to grow widely. So I know a lot of saying was here from Lagos to Silicon Valley. I would love to say from Silicon Valley to Lagos. Let people come from there to here to start the business, to learn what's the meaning of being privileged, just to do startups. Creating startups for a lot of people that I met in the past 2 days. It's not about becoming a billionaire. It's not about I just want to do the next Uber things. I'm going to be the next Facebook. It's more about facing the problems they're facing. There's problems here and I want to solve them. And no one's taking action. So as I want to step in and take actions. It's not about probability, about winning or losing. It's more about this is life. This is my only chance that I have to succeed in my life and go on. And this is what's really inspired me to know. And the guys told me like, this is the Lagos energy. That's why you guys somehow be mad, because you don't see changes happening fast. It takes time. Don't worry about it. So we're here to support. We're here to help. I would love to meet each one of you to learn from you more about what you're doing. No matter what you guys are creating and what startups you're doing, I'm really looking forward for that. And thank you so much again for being part of Startup Vegas. We hope to see you all across the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to move on pretty quickly. We'll have a little segment from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. We'd like to invite Mohammed A. Mohammed, Head of Growth Segments at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, to just address us. Have we got him here? Okay, so he'll be coming soon. Okay, so can we move to the next segment? Okay, thank you very much. Please welcome Mohammed.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, good evening. I must warn you that unlike the last two speakers, I really don't come. I really do not. I'm not here for you just now. I'm here to share some knowledge with you that will eventually be useful to you when you get to a certain point. So yes, we have a stock exchange in Nigeria, and yes, we have an alternative securities market that's primarily designed to cater for companies that are at a stage slightly ahead of where you are now. A snapshot of our market, yes, we are the largest market in Africa. We have 197 dealing members, 173 equities, 74 bonds, ETFs, and all whatnot. Our market is made up of three segments. We have the premium board, the main board, and the alternative securities market. And I think that is particularly what I want to speak about. So our alternative securities market is a segment of our market that's mainly targeted at startups, SMEs, and venture firms. The need for this to come up at some point in our history was the fact that we were only going after the large companies. We were only looking for the big ones, the first banks, the Dangotes, and all whatnot. But it soon became clear that these guys could not continue to pay our meal tickets. They could not continue to pay our salaries. They could not continue to, generate enough resources, for the stock exchange to run. And of course, there was a need to serve the bottom of the pyramid. So we came up with the alternative securities market, which is, of course, the lowest of what we have, and I'll go on to that, then the main board and the premium board. This segment of the market is mainly targeted at high-growth companies. So as startups, you may not qualify for that just yet, but then having that at the back of your mind, knowing that eventually you will get to a point that you want to either get your PE investors or give your PE investors an avenue to exit through the market to raise some money, or maybe to expand your existing operations. So there you have all our three markets and their listing requirements. For the alternative securities market, you have, of course, our targets is the high growth firms. Naturally, to get on this point, these companies must be PLCs, incorporated companies they have to become public liability companies that allows transferability of shares. We prospect that market capitalization or valuation of these companies should range between 100 and 4 billion as opposed to all the other boards. We expect the owners of these companies to be able to hold on to up to 85% and float 15% and have a minimum of 51 shareholders. Naturally, we'll expect these companies post-listing to report to us quarterly and, of course, have employ the services of a designated advisor to guide them through this process. Now, for this segment of the market, what we have done is that we've made some provisions to allow companies within that target audience to come and apply to this. First and foremost, on this segment of the market, we do not pay a lot of attention to your profitability. We don't care if your business is profitable or not. What we're interested in seeing is your business growing. If your business is growing, then it's worth looking into. We do not care about the size of your company. More or less, we have a company listed on the alternative securities market that's totally valued at 12 million naira. We have another company on the same board that's valued at 4.6 billion. So there is a whole range of space, of companies that could come in there. All we require from a company seeking to list on the alternative securities market is just to have a 3-year minimum operating track record. So basically saying that if your business has been incorporated for the last 2 years and you have audited accounts in the IFRS format, you can access the capital or list on the alternative securities market. At the point at which you apply to us, we hope that your accounts or your most recent account should not be more than 9 months at the point that you come to apply to us. I am going to skip these. This is basically the cost. It costs 300,000 naira to list. But I think there is a particular. These are the companies that we currently have listed. These are companies that you probably know. If you're a sugar fan, McNichols makes a sugar brand called Family Sugar. Omoluabi Bank is Omoluabi Mortgage Bank is a small bank based in Oshogo that used to be government owned that was sold off. RAC Unity, those of you that purchase diesel here and there. For those around Computer Village, I'm sure you've seen Julie PLC. Julie PLC is one shop pharmaceutical company that has been listed on the stock exchange for a bit. But I'm trying to find the particular slide, and I'll come back to this. This I think. So this I think is the most relevant slide of. I wish we could blow this up, but it just talks about all of us sitting in this room. You start off with an idea, and that idea is mostly 100% yours. You share that idea with someone. They bring their own tweak to that idea, and of course it's now two of you, you're co-founders, and you begin to talk about how to move this idea forward. At some point, you cross over to family and friends. People that, whether they like it or not, they have to support you. Your husband will probably do that, your wife, your brothers, your sisters. Your favorite uncle will throw in his life savings and get you to a certain level. And then naturally, you cross over, to the first level of structure that you have when you have to go outside your comfort zone to go and seek for financing, right? And the reason why I wanted you to have a look at this slide is just that I am talking about the last point, and I'm sure that's why I was not making a lot of sense when I started, because most of you are in between the first 2 or 3 stages. But the whole essence of the stock exchange being here today is just to tell you that this is available eventually when you get to this point. So, as Eke said in his presentation, that vision is very, very important. So when you know ultimately where you are going to, then you're able to plan and put things in place right from your first step to be able to achieve what you want to achieve, which is having a successful business and making some money for yourself. I see myself like a physics teacher walking into a nursery school. So a lot of things that I've said, are a bit too complicated for your level of business, not you. All right? So I just want you to have at the back of your mind, and I'm sorry if I hit that off wrongly, but I'm just saying that you will eventually get to this point. You would want to do an IPO. Your investors will want to exit. You would want to get a valuation. You want to get liquidity. You want to convert your blood, your sweat, and your time into dollars, cents, naira, and kobo. So the stock exchange is there, and we have the alternative securities market to cater for you. I hope and pray that this little talk, probably 5 years, 10 years down the line, will ring at the back of your heads, and we will see much, much more listed companies on the stock exchange and get to pay my salary. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we have a round of applause again for that? And in the end, this is one of the things that we want to see, right? We want to see you guys go down that journey and end up here, right? So we're really looking forward to making his dreams come true. Okay, great. So let's move on to the special little bit for our first day. So we will like to welcome a set of very experienced young startup entrepreneurs, right? People like you, right? Who are at the cutting edge of what this industry is doing and what is good about our industry, right? These people have gone through all the problems, the challenges, as well as the good of what this industry has. And we want them to come and share these with us, okay? So, can we have, first off, Yele Bademosi, Micro Traction. Please come up. Last but not the least, we'll have Oluyomi Ojo, founder, CEO of Printivo. I feel like we're doing musical chairs here. Great, thank you. That helps. Okay, guys. So, as I said before, welcome. This is a really, really great platform. I've really been looking forward to this. Each of you has had experience both here locally in Nigeria, right? As well as experience with investors and also being, right, in Silicon Valley. Great. So, we really want to spend time picking your brain, really understanding what some of those differences are, right? What some of those challenges are, and really learn what it takes to build companies as successful as yours, and also get to raise some money, right? So first of all, can we get yeah, there we go. Can we get some more mics? Are there any other mics, please? Okay, let's start with you, Yele. Great. Okay, so just really quickly, could you tell us a little bit about Microtraction? I know that out of all the 4 companies, yours is probably the youngest, right? Good. So we'll really love to hear about what you are doing.
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Eze, and I'm the founder of Microtraction. Microtraction is very unique in that we're an investment company, or we're a startup that funds startups. And so we've raised money for our operation expenses, but we've also raised money to invest in other companies. So we're more similar to an angel list or a funders club. So yeah, and we launched publicly about 2 months ago, so July 17th. So we're pretty young.
Sean. Hi everyone, my name is Shola Akimele. I'm the co-founder of Paystack. Paystack is a payments company. We help merchants accept payments from their customers. So just connect to Paystack and forget about all your payment needs. We launched this January last year. We were the first Nigerian company to get into Y Combinator. Y Combinator. Can you yeah. Okay, perfect. So Y Combinator is the Silicon Valley accelerator. Yeah. So we were the first Nigerian company to get into Y Combinator. Y Combinator is the Silicon Valley accelerator. And yes, in about 18, 19 months, we have over 4,000 merchants on our platform. And we're doing over 8 million naira a month.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chika, and I'm the CEO of TalentBase, and we are building the ADP for Nigeria. And it's more to us than just building payroll HR systems for SMEs. We realize that the system is broken. So whether it's payroll disbursement, being able to remit taxes as employer on behalf of your employees, being able to remit pensions, and all the different parts of running a SME efficiently as an HR organization, that's what we're doing. We also were funded by a Silicon Valley startup, so I guess the rival of YC, they're always going and fighting each other, which is 500 Startups, and I was the first Nigerian CEO to be funded by them. So it was really a great experience spending time in the Valley, really understanding the ecosystem and bringing that knowledge back to Nigeria.
My name is Oluyomi Ojo. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Contigo. We help Nigerians order print online. So basically, you can sit at the comfort of your home and order whatever you want to print via the website and have it shipped to your doorstep. We are also a 500 startup company like Chika. So in a way, to YC, like she said earlier. But the interesting part about that is that going to the Valley, we learned so much that we can actually bring a lot back home, but not necessarily copy and paste what is happening in the Valley. In Nigeria, but of course there's a lot of pool of knowledge that we brought back home from the Valley. So it's interesting.
Okay, let's actually start there. So I mean, we know we don't and we shouldn't really try to make our local ecosystem like Silicon Valley. So it can't be Silicon Valley, right? But there's a lot that we can emulate from that, right? So can you just quickly talk us through the experience, right, of being part of a Silicon Valley accelerator, right? And then maybe compare that back to some of your experiences here.
First, I've not been part of the Nigerian accelerator program before. So the only program that I've had experience with is the Silicon Valley one. But the interesting thing about that is when we got to 500 startups, the first thing we discovered was people share a lot of ideas. So there were 22 companies in my batch, and it's a mix of people from diverse backgrounds. Like you get founders and companies from India, places as far as Bangladesh, Nigeria, Canada, and everyone bringing something to the board. You could come up with an idea, and the founder is walking past someone on your system and say, "Hey guys, we actually executed this last weekend. These were the things we did." And off you go. You could cross the street and sign a partnership with the Valley. Somebody could give you a call, and within the next moment you get funded. Things happen very fast in the Valley. And I mean, one of the other things we learned there is that it's a mindset thing. Like the thinking down there is completely different. People want to take the world. They're not looking at what's happening around them. They want to take the world. The mindset is big. and that's something we can copy and learn from, right? And then there's a large pool of talent, right? I don't think there's anything you want to build that you can't find talent around that will build it for you over there. We are moving to very close to that part here. Partnership happen very fast. There's competition, not competition. So companies cooperate and then compete, as against companies competing completely. So those were part of the things that we learned.
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah. So number one is it was probably the easiest money I raised. Funny enough, very easy.
Wow.
Yeah. So actually, the way I got to 500 was interesting. I didn't apply formally. Someone actually approached me, and I did 2 interviews back to back with my advisor. She's Elizabeth Yin. She's no longer there, but she was my first interview, and then I did a second one with the guy, Rob, who actually led that specific batch at Mountain View. And so let's say Thursday I spoke to Elizabeth, Friday I spoke to Rob, Saturday they're like, you're in. That was it. So, it's quite interesting here in Nigeria when I'm speaking to angels. It's like, we want models, we want this, we want that, and it's like less money than when I was actually in the Valley.
Why do you think that is? Shouldn't they have done a bit more due diligence on you because you're from a different ecosystem?
Yeah. So for them, they said, I remember the email, exactly, and Elizabeth was like, because we believe in you. That's the reason why we're investing in your, company. We like what you're doing. We like the growth and where you're going, but it's about you as a founder. And I think it's something that I'm hoping that more Nigerian investors will get to the point, especially as an angel, because the truth is most of these startups don't have much growth or traction to show anything but an idea and where, they're hoping to take, the business. And so a lot of times, angels in the Valley strictly invest in you as a person. Are you sound? Is your team sound? Do you sound like, you have, the right elements to build a unicorn business? That's what they're looking at. So I think that was probably one of the, biggest, things I kind of illuminated for me while being in the Valley.
Okay, I mean, that's very true, right? So when you look at the product market fit, a lot of times it's actually, the team aspect of that can take a bad idea and actually make it something that's amazing. But if you have a bad team, then you're kind of, so I know that you obviously Y Combinator, right, being a little bit different from this side, right? But would you say that in your experience it was very similar? And speak maybe from the point of view of investors, right? Because one of the things that we get to hear is, yes, you have a lot of investors coming in through the doors, right? But maybe not as many really understanding, what is happening down here. It's a bit far for them. We're not really looking at that right now. Do you, how much, deal flow is happening around you?
Okay, thanks for that. So I'll just continue from where she stopped. I think very interesting thing about Silicon Valley is the quick decision. So they need to make a decision very quickly. They don't waste their time for 6 months. They don't wait. Most of them don't waste their time for 6 months. If they don't like you, they tell you, and all that. So deal flow. After YC, there's what they call a demo day, which you have like everybody here will be investors, and then I will come on stage and say, Shola, this, that, blah, 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 and then they like you. They say they like you. They have something on their hands. They like you. They don't like you. And then at the end of the day, I get an email or I see all the people that like me. So for me, after that, I had about 44, I can't remember, maybe like 5 likes. So I had to settle.
Do you know how many investors were there?
Like 700. Yes. So I had about 45 likes. I looked at it. So they will tell you how many people liked you and how many other people they liked. So you know the ones that are serious. Or maybe they don't know that. So. And so for me, so the next morning, I was very, very lucky because I just saw my emails and then there was someone, I think he came to Lagos, it was in Singapore, and sent me an email. So I started with Skype call. There's this thing Yoruba people say where like, like the first person you sell to the morning. Because I had a Skype call with the guy and, blah, 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 face back. I was like, okay, but he doesn't really know me like that, but he likes the idea that I didn't invest about 500K, or is it okay if you invest $100,000? Of course. So I'm like, okay, of course, fine. So like, the Skype call was less than 30 minutes, so I had 100,000. And so I had like 3 more calls. The other guy works at Apple. I was like, he's not really sure, he doesn't know Nigeria. So he said no. Back. So that day, anyways, so I did this for 3 weeks. I met over 60 people. Most of them said no, but about like 11 of them said yes. So, but what I just appreciate there was very good decisions. People telling me back that, oh, we like what you're doing, but we don't trust the Nigerian government. Or we like what we're doing, but we don't understand this now. So that was very helpful. And even for the bigger companies, so Tencent, which is like our biggest investor, very big. Tencent is the largest internet company in China. And the way so when I had a meeting with them and they told me like, okay, they were interested, I'm like, okay, how much do you want? How much do you want? And then so I told them that, you know what, to be honest, I just want a very good decision. So I want to move fast on this. I want to be able to make a decision in 3 weeks. How much can you give me in 3 weeks? And then they said, okay, we'll get back to you. And then they did go back. And then they emailed me back, like, within the week and said, okay, blah, 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 blah. We're still waiting for approval from somebody. And then, like, next day they said, okay, this is what we want to invest in you. Thank you. Collected it. And then 3 weeks later, they emailed me again and said, okay, guy, do you still need more money because we have approval for X amount again? I'm like, okay. So that was them being just, they knew how much, they knew they wanted to do more, but they knew that it was good. And I had that from other investors too, where I just told them, like, don't overthink it. Like, how much can you, like, invest very fast? And then if you like me, if I like you, well, if I don't like you. If you like me, you can now, like, you can add more money. So, yes, so the answer to your question is deal flow. I think it was good deal flow. It was bad. I think I was lucky. So, I think fintech and payments is something that people like. So, I was very lucky. And so, I don't think this was by my own doing. I was just very lucky. But having said that, I had a lot of no's. I had a lot of people that didn't reply my emails too. But I also found that knew very fast that some of these are signals. If you email someone first and he doesn't reply, if you send a follow-up and he doesn't reply, most likely you should be talking to somebody else.
Okay, so are you gonna be as fast as those guys?
I mean, like, I'm gonna try to be fast, but I want to sort of be like a counterweight to what they said in that. So again, I'm in this unique intersection of sort of being, in the middle of being an entrepreneur but being an investor. And so one of the key things about the Valley is there are a lot of investors and there's a lot of money. So my local investors always tell me that capital here is more expensive, right? And what that means is for someone like myself who raised the fund, so not for my startup but to invest in companies, I raised money from both local people and global people, right? So like US investors. The US investors, so Michael Saibo, like the way he said to invest in microtraction was ridiculous. It was just like, okay, let me know when you set up the company. You hadn't even done anything. Let me know when you set up the company. For X thousand, right? Same thing with like Chris. These guys were like, but here it was a little bit different. We had to have meetings but I knew the importance of having sort of like that balance, right? So the key thing is you have to understand that there's loads of money in the Valley and there are people whose job it is to write checks, right? That's what they wake up every single morning, they're looking for companies. There's a list, a spreadsheet that went around for African investors, and I think there are about 90-something investors on that list, which seems like a lot, right? But in New York, there's a similar list, and that list that's just the city. That list has over 1,000 investors. That shows you sort of like the difference, right? So I think you want to have sort of like that that a little bit of understanding. So it does take a bit of time, and that's sort of like the problem we're trying to solve with microtraction. Our goal is hassle-free funding for African entrepreneurs, and so we want to make it easy for a founder who's looking to raise like that first 15K, 50K to raise from us. Now, I mean, my initial goal was to be like YC or 500, wherein you would apply online and then we'll take a meeting and we'll make a decision. And it's been hard, right? Like, I'll be honest, we've had multiple touch points with entrepreneurs, but we try to not waste people's time. If you don't think we're interested, we tell you as quickly as possible. And we'll probably write about 4 checks, maybe 4 or 5 checks in October next month. And it wasn't short, but the idea was like we're a lot faster than what is considered the norm here. And hopefully over time, as we get more muscle memory about how to make good investment decisions, then we can be faster. But our ecosystem is young, and we're trying to get better as investors and as entrepreneurs. So don't judge us too harshly yet.
Just staying with you. So I know that, as you said, microtraction is trying to do things a little bit different, right? First of all, you're going for the very, the early guys, right? Almost like untouched by anybody else. Ideally, right? And you're trying to really identify, growth-driven technology-based companies that can scale to a building, right? In this environment and outside. So let's segue into how do you start looking for that? How do you identify those, companies that you think, will grow fast enough and scale to that level?
Okay, so I think I would say like we'll market first, and what that means is we look at companies that have the potential to make $100 million at scale, right? It's really difficult to try to use valuations as sort of like what you want to target, just because someone can buy 0.001% of a company at $1, $10, and all of a sudden you have like a really high valuation. So we really focus on companies that have the potential to generate a lot of revenue. And so one of the things that I look at myself, and I don't know if anybody does this, but I'm like, after we invest in a company, can a company make $100,000 in 18 months? And that's because when I spend a lot of time speaking to other investors that come after us, and they're like, oh yeah, do you know many companies that are doing 100K, 200K in revenue? And I realized that it was hard for me to sort of point to these companies. So for now, we're really focused on companies that have the potential to generate revenue and are sort of default alive. And that means, and that's a YC saying by Paul Graham, the founder, and he says, if you're unable to raise more funding, are you able to sort of like stay alive without raising more money? And so that's why we sort of like focused on revenue companies in this market. So as an entrepreneur, you're not like, oh, I need to raise more money from an investor. If you don't raise money, you're going to survive. That's the first thing. Then the second thing that we look at is the team. And I think Ike said that a lot. And right now, I've spoken to almost 300 companies in the last 2 months. And it's quite clear to me when the team is right. Like, it's amazing when I'm speaking to an entrepreneur and I'm learning so much about the market that I don't know. It's like I'm learning something new every single time. So those are like my 2 big things. And then the last one I would say is problem significance. Shola has a blog post online that I think everyone should read, and it's about his application to YC. And what you realize is sort of like how big of a problem he was solving. He hadn't even launched fully, and he had 400 companies or merchants on his waiting list. That is ridiculous, right? So when founders are like, oh, should I apply if I haven't launched? I'm like, launch, but how do you know you're making something people want? So if you're solving the real problem, you would know, because people are like knocking down your doors trying to find the solution. Like, I met a company, right? One engineer, and they have 1.2 million users. I was like, what? So it's like, when you build a company, right, really think about sort of like the problem you're solving. And then my last sort of like thing would be, spend a lot of time thinking about your customer acquisition. Most first-time founders focus on, just building a product and think of distribution as an afterthought. So I'm always asking people like, how do you plan to acquire your first users? And it's okay to do things that don't scale, but like I want to have an idea of like how we're going to get to more customers. Because more customers mean more revenue. That means if you don't raise money, it means you're not going to die. And the reason why most companies die is because they don't have money. So if you have those 4 things, come and talk to me because I want to fund you.
Sure. So, awesome. So he just spoke about that application process, right, for Y Combinator. As you went through the process, right, I'm sure you thought about it a few times, apart from just being a lucky guy, right, which I totally disagree with. What are some of the things that you think helped Paystack, right, in being chosen by Y Combinator, becoming one of them? And I say this because of some of the people, in the crowd that would be looking to follow that same path.
So I think the first thing is clarity. You just need to be clear. Like, a lot of people are trying to do things, but they mix their vision with the mission, with everything together. Then the person reading or listening has no idea what they're saying. For me, I just really wanted to be clear that payments in Nigeria and Africa can be better. And if there's anybody that can make it better, I might be the person. Because firstly, I built workout software before. Secondly, I have already started playing with it and it's already working. And then thirdly, people are already a few people are using it and more people are even trying to use it. So just that clarity is very important. So you see people just say things like, oh, DSTV, for example. But the person reading your application does not know what DSTV is. So you have to say things like, oh, the largest paid TV company in Nigeria. And these small things, even if you're doing something good, someone cannot understand what you're saying. It's just in your head. So
don't waste their time.
Exactly. So to answer your question directly, I think you should be able to clearly articulate 3 very impressive things about your business. If you are lucky, you have traction, then just say that. If you don't have traction, if you have very good experience or relevant experience, just say that. If you're solving a problem in a big market, just say that. And just by doing those things, I think whoever is reading you, whoever is talking to you can get a sense of what you're trying to do.
Do you have a similar experience?
Yeah, so for me, because I didn't apply formally, I had to speak to them and just say what it is on top of my head because I had no idea what I was walking into. And funny enough, when I had the first interview with Elizabeth, I actually just thought she was looking at me for a future application or batch. I didn't know she was actually considering me for that particular batch. So I think another thing to add is to really understand your markets. You need to know it inside and out because not even with the application process, but even if you get in, or even for future investors, they're going to drill you backwards and forwards. How big is your market? Who is your market? Who is the target customer? Understanding your target customer. Why do they actually need your service? And for me, because I'm doing, on the surface, it's HR and payroll. And so the question I get is, well, everyone's doing it. And I'm like, no. And I really go into the difference, what we're doing, the system. And I really understand the system because I was an HR consultant first. And I actually worked at ExxonMobil here in Nigeria. So I actually solved the problem internally before going on to do talent base. And so because I'm clearly able to articulate the problem, the systems, why it's broken, and further, a lot of these Silicon Valley investors want to understand beyond Nigeria, can this be an African thing? Not just a Nigerian problem. And I'm also able to speak on that. And so I think it's really important that when you're doing the application, take some time to research other African countries. What are they doing there? Is there a similar problem? Because if you can't speak to that, at the end of the day, when I was pitching at 500, I kept saying Africa. Because they say in Nigeria, they're like, okay, this small thing here on the side, even though we know it's a big market, to them, they just see Africa as one big place. And so you really have to make sure that whatever problem you're solving is an African problem. And I think it goes a lot further when you're, having meetings with investors there as well.
So if you look at the 500 startup application form, it's very simple, about 10 questions. And virtually all the answers and responses were one-liners. Which means it's very possible to actually apply and miss out the most important things you have to say about your company. And these guys have tons of companies they review every day, from which they will choose to interview about 100 or 200, and then eventually scale it down to about 20 companies. So when you respond to those questions and you don't take the key things, the guys will look at it and just flip it and go to the next company. So when we were applying, one of the things we focused on was our numbers. We have traction already. So for all the places where we need to talk about traction, we're just hitting the nail on the head. XYZ number of customers. This is the value of each customer. This is the number of customers we have today. But in a market like Nigeria, we can acquire 500,000 of such customers. Anyone that sees that document, the first thing is that, oh, he has 1,000 customers and he's making $5 from each of them. But in that market, you can acquire 500,000 of those customers and grow 10% of the account every month. We tried to stick with the numbers and we applied. 24 hours later, the email came in that you've made it into the interview stage. Because what happens, it seems as people apply the review immediately. So if you are not in, you are off. So, and we got into the interview and all the questions were asked. We were sticking with the numbers. Like, this is what we're doing, this is what. And at the end, I mean, we got in. What I try to say is, if you have traction, nail on that traction. When there is no traction, people always look at the team. Can this team make traction happen? And then the market size, which is also very important. If you have a fantastic team and people are not ready to pay, or you're in a market where people can't pay for what you are offering, you don't have a business in the first place, not investing money from anyone. So.
And also, just another thing, because funny enough, my roommate was also in YC, so I know both application processes. So one thing to note, 500 is about traction. YC is more so early stage, and they really prefer technical co-founders. So I think that's something that also people need to know. So for example, if you know your business does not have that technical co-founder yet, or maybe you're on that path, you may want to make sure you get that before you go to YC. Because I know a few companies had that issue. That they asked, where's your technical co-founder? They didn't have. But I know YC really hammers into that. But 500 is about traction. And even recently, they changed their look to, it's now called Series A. So more so, they want companies who are ready to raise Series A. Now, for the African startups, they're a little bit more forgiving because they realize that it takes a bit longer for us to get to that point. But they prefer numbers. And so the one thing I have noticed is that every African startup that's been part of the 500 process had traction, because we had to show traction too. That was actually a pretty big part of our application process.
Okay, so it's all well and good, right, to start with traction, right, especially in this market. How do you think the months spent there, right, helped to sort of maybe accelerate that, right? Was it something that some of that mentorship did that equal growth in traction, growth in revenue? I guess what I'm really asking is, was it worth it going in and coming out?
So the first thing we learned when we went to our startup was one metric that mattered. And trust me, as a founder, I haven't like that before. Like, we had several metrics that we were measuring as a company. And we got into 500 startups, and we had our first session, and it was like, you guys need to find another star and just focus on that. Every other thing can point to that direction. And one metric that matters is completely different from company to company. You have companies where it's the number of users, companies where it's revenue, it's completely different. So we found that, and we just focused on increasing that month on month. Right? We learned all that, and there's also the value that you get from the kind of mentor you have, the weekly meetings, the conversations, founders in other business, and then conversations. So even before demo day, we were already having funding conversations. We were told not to have funding conversations, but as an African founder, seriously, I should have funding conversations before demo day. No way. So we had investors that would come in and they would ask for meetings, and we were like, come on, let's have this meeting. I could remember one of such scenarios where we had a meeting with a woman, and then the following week she was like, on what document are you missing? Is it a save or a note, or we're like, oh, we're doing compatible, and she was like, send it to me. And then I sent it to her, and then after a week, she called me to say, send the transfer instruction. I'm paying 50. And we met only once. And the following day, after sending transfer instruction, for me, I was like, okay, really. And then the next day, she called me. She said, I'm in the bank. I'm having a few challenges. You need to send me the bank address of. And trust me, she invested and signed the notes after investing, which you won't find happening around here. So, well, it's a different market entirely, different environment entirely. The scenarios, both environments are completely at a different stage. Different. So it was an amazing 4 months. Some companies were already wasting their money before they especially because companies have traction already. Some of them are already making money already. So you will have great conversations with investors, even with people within your badge, your mentors. Some people will not invest in your company, but they give you great feedback. And I mean, people don't waste your time, like we said earlier. I've been meeting and the guy says to you, yeah, I'm sitting on $20 million, but my help is on the write a check that goes to Africa. So I like you, but thing can't be done. And when you meet someone that's going to invest in you, trust me, you will know. Day one of the meeting, they will say to you, oh, I'm doing this deal. Or the next day, he says to you, I'm doing this deal. The guy says, I don't do e-commerce. And I'm looking for fintech, and that's fine. 5 minutes out of the meeting.
Shola, can you speak to that? So, a contrasting or similar point of view?
Yeah, so for me, like I feel like the time I spent there was very helpful. Focus was the first thing with the night. Like Yomi said, pick one metric and just drive it up. And that was very important. And then the advice was just very, very, very good. Don't be distracted. Don't go for networking events. Don't go to Lagos Startup Week. It's true, because if you're building your business, don't go for Lagos Startup Week. Sorry. And so it was really like, so just sit down, talk to your customers, build your product week after week. Whatever you need to do, just do it. If you do that well, in fact, I remember the first advice I got. It was like, the work of the business, the work of the founder is to build this business. It's not to chase investors, it's not to do any of those things. Because if you build a solid business, like investors will break, they will change people who say I don't invest in e-commerce. It's because they haven't seen any very wonderful e-commerce company, you know. So what really matters is you building a solid business. So I got that very fast, and I just started calling customers, building products, and connecting, you know. So and it was helpful. I think the time zone also helped me because it's 8 hours behind. So you work Nigerian time when Nigeria is asleep. You work American time. Nigeria wakes up. You work Nigerian time again. So that was helpful. And then I think another thing was just the connections. So I'm not sure I met you, but I met Yomi. In fact, I think I became close to all of them in San Francisco. We were in Lagos together, but we don't see ourselves. You know, but I think exactly. So just being in this place where proper ecosystem, where you can see people regularly, you can take calls, they can connect you to other people. I met Mr. Ike when I was in San Francisco. All my life in Lagos, I didn't even know him. I didn't meet him. I was in San Francisco, someone connected me to him. You know, and so people just helping people. I feel like there's something about the atmosphere that just makes people want to help. I don't know why. You know, and that early help was like all my customers, everybody. It wasn't me. It was just people helping me, just helping. So yeah, that's what I.
Okay. So I wanted to speak more towards some of the gaps, right, that we have here, because you mentioned a few of them. One of them was sort of like the talent that you get to interface with at some of these accelerators, right? Why do you think that people are more open, right? First of all, right, to being able to share information and solutions, right? helping you out with your product, telling you where to go to find certain things over there, right, rather than here. That's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, do you feel like we've gone, because I feel like we've moved a little bit since, say, 2010, when the first crop of startups and this big bang, right, really started. I think that we've moved in terms of our sophistication of founders, right? We moved from the sock.com phase, where we were just starting e-commerce for everything, right? Because people have realized that it takes more to sort of survive in this environment, right? So do you think that we've come sufficiently far enough in terms of sophisticated talent, founders, skill sets for you?
So I think I'll start with the second question first, in that you cannot underestimate the role of like companies like Paystack and Flutterwave have played in the ecosystem, in that they've made it easy for people to accept payments online. And if you're going to build a tech startup, you want to sort of integrate one of those particular APIs into your business. So that's encouraged a lot more startups. I've definitely seen like a change in trends from when I started looking at startups in December 2015 when I got back to now. So there's a lot more sort of fintech companies, and I think that's because of the success of sort of fintech companies. But I think definitely like the ecosystem has matured. There are people who have started companies before that have sort of failed and are working on new ideas, taking their previous experience from the previous startups. YC and 500 are tech stars are looking at the ecosystem. You have land, you have people like us who are sort of getting into the space as well. So I think it's definitely sort of like progress, but like there's still so much work to be done. In terms of sort of talent and mentorship, I think again it's just a factor of time, right? Like Silicon Valley, if you look back into the annals of history of like the valley, it's been like since this like late 50s and early 60s when the government was funding technology projects when they're trying to go against sort of like Russia, and over time it sort of like just generates network effects. Like YC has funded 1,400 companies, and so you have a network of founders who have gone through the program. We don't necessarily have 1,400 venture-backed companies in Nigeria, and so the network of YC alone is stronger than the network of the Lagos ecosystem. And that's one of the things where we're trying to solve. We're trying to figure out how do we find capital that is patient, but is also one sort of like that true alpha in returns, and is willing to take a bet on this particular market. And if you find that capital, how do we then find entrepreneurs who understand what a venture-backable business is and are driven to build those kind of businesses, and how do we then connect that capital to those founders? But these things take time, right? Like Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can see the progress that these guys have made in their businesses over the last 2 years, and I'm super bullish on what the guys in the audience can build.
And just to add to that, I think things are getting easier now. Power is changing hands, and we help. Yeah, seriously, because my first customers were like people like Pintable and Yomi. So imagine if I had to beg Yomi to use this, like it's easier than begging Dangote, or So if the companies that are making, like, if the real companies you're selling to are now being backed by young, pragmatic CEOs, it makes everybody's work easier, it makes our work easier, it makes everybody's work easier. So it's now easier to start a company because your customers are now more relatable. There's so much we use at Paystack now. I think that is really changing that I'm excited about is that new corporate companies are coming up, and that's happening. Second thing is that it's now also like acceptable for people to run their businesses. So before it wasn't cool, like you had to be working in a bank, you had to work,
right? But we just can't find the entrepreneurs to invest in, right? The right entrepreneurs to invest in. We don't have enough. Now Dave, right, McClure, when he came down, was like, F you, right? You guys are just not taking enough risk, right? You're being a bit too careful, and you need to be doing more deals. So it's not a problem of the entrepreneurs, it's actually the investors, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So number one, when I do speak to investors here, what I actually get is your biggest competition is not other startups, it's the treasury bonds. That's actually your biggest competition. So most of these investors that do have liquid capital to invest in a startup say, you know what, I'd rather put my money in a treasury bond and 6 months something comes out. Versus here where it may be a few years. And I remember I actually had a bad experience at first trying to raise locally. Now I'm more open to it. But I remember I had a meeting with an investor here like about 2 years ago, just when Talent Base was moving, and he was like, okay, so in 5 years, can we sell the company? I was like, eh? I was like, we're just getting started. Especially as a SaaS business, this is just like basic fact that it takes at least 7 years to see anything come out of it. So if you're investing in my business, and right now we're like year 3, we're getting to year 3, like, yeah, you can't just come and say, oh, in 5 years you need to sell off, because you're not going to get value out of the business. And so I think that's the biggest issue, is getting investors to understand, that if you're investing in a startup, like any of us, you're in it for the long term. You're not just looking for a quick sell. But I think the other side is startups also need to be more aware of their exit options. So what I've done with investors here is I started speaking more about how I see ourselves exiting. And I think that also will help investors to be like, okay, that makes sense, like, here, exiting may not be being listing on the stock exchange. You have to be real with yourself. It may be, being acquired by another Nigerian organization. So one of the best examples is InterSwitch and Vanso. And it's great for us because I can actually use that example, for our startup, is this is a real possibility. InterSwitch may want to buy us, or, any other fintech type organization. So it may be acquisition, and it may be acquisition from a US or UK company that's looking to get into this market. So for example, ADP has had a very difficult time entering the African market. So we may be their acquisition strategy. So I think it's both startups being able to sell really, how they can get their money out. Because at the end of the day, investors want to know. In Silicon Valley, they know that, okay, there's an option that this startup may become a unicorn, or it's very common to be acquired, or it's very common to see merger acquisition. So for them, they're thinking about it, but they know there's options. And I think here they're still like, I'm not exactly sure. I will say though, lastly, that in just the past year, I've seen so many new investors crop up. So I think there is hope. I know a year ago when I was, originally looking for funding, there was like a small pool, and it was like the same 10 investors everyone knew. I'm actually finding out in the past year that new investors are cropping up. So Ike over here, I remember having conversations with him originally when he was starting his fund. There's so many other investors here in Nigeria, and also in other African countries as well that are popping up. And luckily, they're all in the same ecosystem. So you're not limited to Nigeria. There's actually so many other countries that you can have conversations with. Kenya is interested in Nigeria. I've had conversations with Egyptian investors that are very interested in Nigeria. Morocco as well. So there's plenty of options, and this is all within the past year or two. I've been seeing these changes.
So, for me, I think the first thing we need to face is the reality.
Okay.
There is money in Nigeria, yes, but there is not enough money to be very realistic about that. How many investors can buy $100,000 within a week in Nigeria? Let's face that fact. Now, if you switch to the value, it's a completely different ballgame. 90% of the angels that write check were one set of millions. People who have exited their own businesses, or maybe they got money out of the fund. So there is the ability to put the right checks, right? Different ballgames entirely. So the times I meeting with local investors, what I learned was that some people will even have conversations with you when the money is not there yet. Why? Because they're trying to raise their own money, and then they're having a conversation with you, hoping that the money comes, and then the money doesn't come, the guy doesn't. The guy doesn't the guy doesn't reply your mails again. So I mean, it's a completely, I mean, both ecosystems are completely different. Where we are, the valley has been down that part before. If you watch the movie Something Ventures, you'll probably see just how difficult it was for some people to raise money back then in the valley. So it's not like you want to switch and be where the valley is today. So it's a reality. There's not enough money. Secondly, people don't, because there's not enough money, people don't have the appetite for risk. Right? You don't want to. I mean, I tell people, if you want to make money from your investments in a tech firm in 3 years, just buy Okada and be happy. You know? Because to be very honest, it's most likely not going to happen. Thirdly, we don't have enough exits to encourage people to want to write checks. Exits are going to come. They don't come overnight. They didn't come overnight in the valley. It took time for companies to start selling. So we'll have those exits, but they're just not there yet. Also, the more exits we have, the more money people have in circulation, the more checks people can write, the more founders that have exited their own businesses, the more those founders can look at other younger founders that are just starting businesses and give them $20K a year, $10,000 a year, because they believe in those people. So, I mean, and then the more VCs exit, the more money those VCs have to write more checks. So that is the reality for me. And for me, we have to face it and see a way to raise locally.
You want to answer that?
I feel like we are being very, very unfair to local investors. We have not said anything good about local investors today. So let me start saying yes, so just to help them. I think local investors can be helpful. I think what I've seen is that they connect you to talent. So there's some people that, because they meet plenty of people, just because they just see people, even though they say they waste their time on to do all that. But they meet plenty of people. But sometimes I've seen a lot of people connect me and just call me like, oh, I just met this person is looking for a job. Are you interested? You know, they connect you to customers. I think somehow when a lot of foreign companies, maybe specifically because of Paystack, when a lot of foreign companies are coming to Nigeria, somehow they reach out to some of my investors, get to know local ones, and they're able to like just let me know and say, oh, this company is thinking about Nigeria, connect them to them. In fact, they also connect you to other investors. So I feel like local investors are also very good because they can be good because just by being in the ecosystem, they can connect you to talents, they can connect you to customers, and they can connect you to other things. And in fact, some of them, when they say no, just knowing them just also helps. You know, they connect to opportunities. So local investors are not that bad.
I think. Sorry, we got yelling.
Sorry. To add to that, no one said local investors are bad, but it's what it is. Like you. No. My saying it is what it is not that they are bad, but you can't force people to invest when they don't have what to believe in yet. Like, there are no exits yet. And people need to start seeing those exits before they can split their money into half or take 10% of what they have in the bank and put in you that have never built anything before. It is what it is. Those risks they can take in the bank because if the guy runs out of money, he has credit facility, they can fall back to. We don't have that here, so the risk for appetite is not like it is there. More importantly, we have local investors in our company, and they add value that some foreign investors don't have. There is a local technical know-how, and there is a local connect that you can only get from local investors. There are certain emails that only a local investor can send, and they will shake things around for your company. So more often than not, it's better to have a blend of both local investors. And the last 6 months, like, we had local investors who took decisions like foreign investors about investing. 3 weeks and then they funded.
So things are changing.
Yes, I think things are changing. think things are changing. You see, there's a local investors are flying out to the value for YC, there would be for 500 startup, there would be for. So things are changing.
Do you want to add to that?
I mean, I think you guys just sort of like hit me on the head in terms of there's a reason why like I personally wanted global and local investors involved in microtraction. And you know, we've talked about it in terms of like that kind of connections or like opening doors. And you know, like myself and Shola both share a similar investor, and I know how hard, you know, one of these guys really works with microtraction, and I would like to think Shola has a similar experience with Paystack as well. So, you know, I think there are definitely positives and negatives, but you know, you have to be very aware of sort of the overall context and then put that into consideration. But then as a startup, you know, when you're trying to raise money, not that, I mean, I don't want to say just take the money, but if you're unable to raise money from the valley and you have like a local person who believes in you and wants to invest in your company, like don't say no. I don't think anybody say no, but don't say no because everybody's like raise money from, you know, Silicon Valley or whatever. Right? Take the money and build your business and grow your business, and then you know you find investors chasing you.
Okay, just really quickly. So actually, we have a question from Twitter from Consonants for microtraction. So it says, knowing that cashing out might be long for startups, how is microtraction, which is also a startup, planning to cope in 3 years?
So at the very minimum, right, like microtraction raised enough money to cover our operation expenses for 3 years, and that's without taking the management fee. So at the very minimum, we're going to be here for at least 3 years. But I think like I'm inspired by the likes of like Founders Club and AngelList. We generally believe that our value will go up with the ecosystem, similar to like an ETF. And if we do our job right and we're actually in service of entrepreneurs, like you check my Twitter bio, I say that like microtraction exists to be in service of entrepreneurs, and we're trying to find entrepreneurs that want to work with us and partner with us to build their companies. And so as long as we place our focus on founders and we sort of like, you know, actually add value, we believe that the founders that we fund will be the best advocates for the work that we do. And I'm already seeing that already, like, you know, Mark Essen has sent me a bunch of companies. I was at Shola's office over the weekend, and you know, I was speaking to founders there. And so there's really a lot of collaboration with venture-backed founders who are supporting microtraction, and we've only just started. So, you know, I genuinely believe that we'll be here long term, so we're not going anywhere.
Awesome, great, we'd like to hear that. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to ask, right, to you guys is, you know, we've seen the ecosystem mature, right, again with founders. So in your sort of experience, right, how important is it to you within that, you know, local street smarts, right, as founders, right, versus, you know, international, you know, imports, right, with the MBAs and the, you know, knowing how to structure things. You know, no, this is a really, really key question, because Nigeria is an environment like no other, right? We've had companies come in and, you know, they've done things in other countries that worked, hands down, you know, it's a slam dunk when you bring it in here, and all of a sudden it's like, what happened, right? You know, Nokia was telling me something like about a few years ago, right, with the Asher phone. And, you know, it's, sometimes things are upside down here. So locally, right, how important is it for you, you know, maybe from an investor point of view and also within your companies, right, to have or bring in, right, local street smarts versus, you know, the outside, you know, big experience of best practices and things like that?
So I think this is quite so like a contentious, you know, debate, and it's been on Reddit, it's been on Twitter, and I think from my point of view, like I'm very aware of that particular bias, and I do not personally have a preference as to whatnot. And if I look at the companies that we've shortlisted, I think we are actually heavily skewed towards, Nigerian, sort of like Nigerian families. Like I said, everybody's Nigerian, but I mean like, locally trained. They've worked at a previous company somewhere. I may not have sort of like gone to uni in the UK or worked in a US company. But I think that's not even what you should focus on as an investor, right? I'm just focused as to how well does an entrepreneur understand the market and the problem they're solving. And if you're someone that has been here, then that's fine. If you've been someone that's been in the US and UK, that's fine as well. So I do not even consider that as a...
But do you find, so I guess there's a superficial aspect of it where it's like, okay, so this person's coming from the UK or the US, but if you dig a bit deeper, do you find that maybe individuals that have worked maybe outside know how to scale it better in a structured way? Or do you, maybe those are some of the stereotypes that you can speak to? Or maybe it is a stereotype.
I mean, I don't know. I can't speak to a lot of like general investors because like we're still like new. But I think from our own case, I just haven't, like, it's literally been a thing that we've just not focused on. And so I always try and find out like, what about this person? So we don't have, even locally, we don't have like really good universities that you can fall back on. So like in the Valley, maybe they're like somewhere to Stanford or MIT or HBU or whatever. Here, like I actually don't know what the very best universities are. So I'm literally focused on like, okay, what about this person shows, a path of like exceptional ability and sort of like exceptional achievement. So we have a question application form where it's like, don't be modest. What's the most impressive thing that you've achieved? And so we're trying to use that as a proxy as to, somebody's, past successes. And I'm looking at like key personality traits. And I remember one of my advice, I think it was actually Lexi. Lexi was like, I should speak to like a bunch of, venture-backed founders and try to see, if I can glean anything from there. And I've spoken to everybody here like multiple times offline, and I think one of the things that strikes me every single time is that each of these guys are just killers. Like they're not going to give up. And so they have this like insane level of determination, insane level of persistence and adaptability, right? And so when an entrepreneur has those three things, and it gets me really excited, and none of those three things are tied to, where you're from, right? So for me, it's just something that I'm like, maybe me not knowing about, universities and what are the best. Like if someone puts, I worked at this company, I actually don't know. Like, I don't know how good that company was. And like, I remember when I came back, I got an offer from a particular company and it was meant to be like a really good company, and I turned it down because I just knew I wouldn't have the right cultural fit, and I felt like I would learn bad things. So maybe sometimes working in some of these companies, you have like the pros and cons. So the pro can be that you learn about Nigerian business and some of the pain points. So for instance, Chico working in HR, in ExxonMobil, but sometimes you can also learn some bad things about how to be a manager, how to, a lot of first-time founders don't know how to manage people, so you can, I think as an investor, you shouldn't wait towards proxies. Try and figure out what makes an entrepreneur special and try to find that secret sauce in every founder.
If you guys want to answer that?
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter. So like, even just look at us, you only went to Maltec. I think they're still on strike. But it doesn't matter. Like, I went to Bangkok. But I think she's cool abroad. She speaks very good, So, I don't know. So like, it doesn't matter. Like, you shouldn't judge us you should judge us by what we do, what we're building, how passionate we are about what we're doing, and all that. So that's how I think about this.
The only thing I will add is that, so for my industry, I think, not really that it's fully broad per se, but maybe because I got a master's in human capital management. So I actually know the system of HR. Which is why, when people come to me and say, oh, there's another payroll company, I said, I'm not looking at them, because I know I'm building a system, and I'm actually trying to put all those systems together to build ADP, and that is more than just payroll. So I think for me, that is why getting that master's in that, because I understand that, but I don't think it's necessarily a thing of, oh, I went to school in the U.S. versus, Nigeria. I will say though, Nigeria will force you to become local. It will. Because, for example, when we started the business, we wanted to charge monthly. And the companies were like, what's that? Why don't you just pay for the year and be done with it, And we had to change that. And when I went to Silicon Valley, they're like, oh, let's look at your monthly metric. I said, it's not that simple, And I had to literally teach them how payments work in Nigeria, how companies just want to pay for the year, and all that. So I think building a business here, if you don't adapt to the local way of doing things, you're going to suffer a lot. And that's another reason why we've been plugging into banks. We're doing so many different things that really a typical payroll company in the U.S. would not do. Even, for example, lastly, a lot of people in Silicon Valley, when I was trying to explain talent-based, what they knew was Zenefits and Gusto, which is similar, they're payroll HR companies for SMEs in the US. So a lot of times I had to use that as examples. But here in Nigeria, what I find out is people don't want just payroll. I get companies all the time, they're like, no, I want appraisal, I want leave, I want this, I want that. And it's very weird because in the US, most times they say, I just want payroll. That's all I want. I just want payroll, I will go to someone else for appraisal, I will go to someone, and they're just fine functioning like that. But here, it's almost like you're fighting the customers, why don't you have everything, And that is the reason why we actually had to shift, really our business because of that, just because that's just how, Nigerians are used to buying, SaaS businesses, yeah. So that definitely is just something that I had to adjust to being here in Nigeria.
So this bias has been on for a long time, online, offline, and offline. I need to know, your question, does it have to do with funding or execution? So before I go into the question, is it about funding or execution?
I think we would always start with execution.
Execution, okay.
And then we can look at the
I think anybody can execute anywhere as long as you can localize your thinking. I've seen Nigerian founders who go outside the country to build businesses in other people's countries, and they are doing fantastic and well. And I've seen people who returned to Nigeria. They left Nigeria when they were 6 years old. They don't know anything about the country. They get here and they localize, and they were able to build great businesses. So for me, I went to London, by the way. We are still trying to should I say so. And my co-founders, none of us studied in Nigeria, even though we left to our other trainings and degree and certificates outside the country. But local products, like they used to say. So I don't think bias works for us.
I think that Nigeria is such a unique environment, anyways, right? It's anyone's game, right? It's still growing. We're still learning, right? So I think my next question sort of fits into that, right? Because one of the things that you mentioned, right, was that local connect, right? That local investors bring, right? We know that in Nigeria, local connect is one of the most important things, right? It's a recommendation society a lot of times. But then when our ecosystem rests on things like that, like things like who do you know, right? What is your biggest fear, right? As a startup that has these dreams, right, of scaling and taking over these industries. What scares you about, this environment and, just your startup? What is your biggest fear?
The first thing we need to look at is technology in a way has taken part of those walls that's broken them down. There was a time before you can build a business in Lagos, you have to be a member of a club, or one of your uncles have to know somebody in Lagos Island Club or somewhere. Those days are gone. People are building things without anybody's permission. Now, you may need one or two, like we said, we talked about the connect and all that, knowing people. And those things will happen as you build your business. They are not things that happen before you build your business. And you actually don't have to be to be born here all over the place to know those things. Take for example, and I like citing those examples. The best entrepreneurs in Nigeria are the Indians. Are they Nigerians? No. But somehow they've been able to figure out the markets. They've been able to get the connect, like the connect you'll be talking about. They even have it more than you guys. Sometimes an Indian guy will introduce you to your own fellow Nigerians that you do deals with, and he'll say, "This is my brother." And you're like, so these things are there, and you don't get those contacts. You don't build that network the day you start your business. You build them as you build your business. However, the walls are down now, thanks to technology. The walls are down now, and anyone can build stuff without anyone's permission.
Jacob.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think the private sector is a huge reason why. Even banks who are, I still feel like the dinosaurs when it comes to technology, but even them, like just in the past year, I've seen them open up application. We want to work with fintech companies. Come, they're like, now they're looking, versus the other way where I felt like we were chasing banks before. I've actually had several banks that come to me. So I think this is definitely helping break down barriers. I think the biggest fear I still have is government, in the sense of we don't know where we're going. That's the truth, and it's hard for us to sell that when we're in the U.S. or in the U.K. or anywhere else because they put CNN, they put BBC or wherever, and they just see that the president, they're not sure, like they're just seeing these type of things, and it just doesn't restore confidence. And so for me, from a fundraising standpoint, that government piece is really key. And it helps when the government is stable, is clear, the GDP is going up, is clear the economy is going this way. We definitely need that, I think, for startups, especially as we continue to raise funding. So for me, that's one of my fears is just this government.
Yeah, so just like I think it's also like just some government too. I think things can be very unclear in Nigeria. You don't know when you're on a one-way road, for example. They just come and say you're on one-way. So I've had people come and say, we're supposed to pay NSITF 1%, this. And I had another one, you have to pay health. So these things just come at you, and so you don't know when you're complying or not. That unclarity is really very shocking. And then the other thing is just talent. I wonder if, and I know this is a good problem to have, but I wonder, can you build a company that has 20,000 engineers locally? Can you do this? So how will you be able to do all this and build? Can infrastructure even support them? Will you even house them and all that? So those are two big things.
I think my biggest fear is sustainability. In that, can we build an ecosystem that is sustainable on its own? Right? Right now, almost every conversation today about funding has been about global investors, and that's just because for our startups to raise money at decent valuations, they need to go, even just to raise money at all, especially once they go past 100K, they need to go outside. And so the question is as an ecosystem, can we become sustainable? And not just from a funding point of view, it's about talent. So access to sort of engineers, designers, operators who would actually build the business. And that's something that I think very deeply about. Like microtraction, we're not out to solve all these problems, but it's something that we've identified and actually sort of scoped out the different gaps, and we're always sort of figuring out, okay, who should we partner with? Combine our network of global and local investors, to some of these people who are doing very interesting things in the different gaps. So I think about sustainability a lot, and I hope that within the next 5 to 10 years we can become a lot more sustainable as an ecosystem. So yeah.
Okay, great. So we want to open this up now to you guys. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 questions. If you just put your hand up. Okay, so we've got one right here.
Hello everyone, my name is Freddy. My question goes to all the panelists. I want to ask this question pertaining to investors. I've been expecting to get a feedback from you guys, and it's actually on the reason why the reward investors get from investing in any startup. Is it commission based or is it on equity ownership? That's the first question. And the second question is actually for startups. Is it compulsory or advisable to leverage on already built technology solution for your startup, or to start from scratch? Maybe you need to be an app application developer also to solve the problem, or you leverage on existing applications.
Okay, so do you want to take the first one?
Okay. So when an investor invests in your company, typically for venture capital is equity, and that means we're taking a percentage of the business. And for unlike PE, you take sort of like a minority stake, and that can range from 2% to 7, as high as 20. So that's sort of like what happens, and we make money when you exit, and an exit happens either through 3 ways actually. So the most popular one is an acquisition. So a bigger company buys your company for hopefully hundreds of millions of dollars. The second one is like an IPO, where you go public. So you list on the Nigerian Stock Exchange or the JSE or the New York Stock Exchange or LSE, whatever. And then lesser known one is trade sales. And what that means is if I came in at sort of a very early stage, so maybe the angel round, it's possible that when you're raising at Series B or Series C, I decide to sell my shares or some of my shares to incoming investors. But I don't want to go into the details of that, but that's sort of like how we make money. And different investors have different opinions on trade sales. Like I remember when we were raising our own money, some investors were asking us like, what are our exit profiles? And it was quite divisive to see what everybody thought. I was happy that came up because we became, as a result of that question, we became aligned in terms of our long-term strategy for funding companies and exits.
So the second question, should you just download the software or should you build it? So I think it depends on what your business is. If what you're selling, like you have to build your core, that's why you're into the business. And then like any other thing, like based like for example, a payments company, I can download an HR software. So like I don't have to build HR software. I don't have to build any other thing. Like any other thing I'm doing, I can feel it. Whatever happens, I can do it. But like my core, I have to build it. That's how I think about it.
So what, you want to answer that?
Like Shola said, it depends on what you are building, but more importantly, it depends on how fast you want to launch. I remember when we launched Bitibo, the first version of Bitibo was not the white label technology. Nobody knew that, and we had to be paying monthly, like for using that technology. But what we learned over time was first, you can't outsource the core of your business. So, and at that time, you know what it looked like finding talents. The guys that built technology were in Israel, were paying dollars, were hours apart. You want an application, send an email. The guy responded after 24 hours to say, okay, we'll get it done. After a week, he still doesn't get back to you. You can't build fast with that. So we knew early that we had to build our own, and we started building about 3 months after we launched the first Bitibo. So sometimes you probably have to just, if it's not the core of your business, get out there early so that you get your MVP in place. And the early traction, you can see if there's a business in that segment or not, without having invested so much time and money and people into what you're doing.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got one hand over here. Well, one lady at least, please. Okay.
My name is Mustafa. I'm sorry, I want to be personal a little bit. Mr. Yomi, if you're not in Britain, what will you be doing? What other business do you think you'll be doing? And for Shola, I'm sorry, Mr. Shola, if you're not in, after Pesta, what next?
Tough question though. Truth is, if I'm not in painting, I'll most likely be in a creativity related business. Most likely, I moved from advertising into painting, and I'm most likely going to still be around that field. But you know what? It also depends. So the next big thing I don't know, but right now it's with you.
For me, after Paystack, I'm not sure I want to do this again. So I want to do this hustling and entrepreneurship again. So I might just be helping startup founders, just help people. But if I want to go back into entrepreneurship, I'm going to have to figure out a way to help children learn how to code. So something about education, children, and computing, just put everything together and something like that.
Yep. Okay, so we got one question here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Kelvin. I really enjoyed today's session. I celebrate your successes. My question is this. Now to go for 500 startups or YC, like to apply for that, you will need to be competing globally. Right? Now, you need to be competing globally, but there are some things that are still broken in our core in Nigeria. Like we still don't have good internet. We still our telecommunication is still very bad. And how is the tech ecosystem, trying to fix all these things? Like micro traction. How are you looking to fund startups that are doing things that are going to fix the things that are broken in our core in Nigeria, instead of looking at startups that are already doing maybe AI and VR and stuff that are competing globally? Thank you.
Okay, that's one question.
Good evening, guys. My name is Kola Wali. I just want to chip into things like from Shola Chika. Chika said earlier, no, I just want to chip something. Chika said earlier that when you're meeting these people, you need your tech co-founder. And Shola also said that you don't know when you combine with Nigeria, things just come out on your face. So that's one thing we're not thinking along while we're doing the business. You need your lawyer for your regulatory compliance. So probably what bill to pay or what other, how to incorporate and all, few what, things so that you don't know when you are, infringing or you are complying. So you get your lawyer along your business. I'm a legal practitioner anyway.
Okay, so.
I think I understand there's a difference between infrastructural problems, and I encourage more startups to do it. I think the truth is a lot of times startups don't go into that, at least here in Nigeria, is because a lot of times those infrastructure, the telecom, light, things of that nature really require regulation. So you really have to know the right people to get into some of these things. Because people, like telecom, I'll tell you, is a cabal. And if you don't know the right people, there's certain people blocking. And this is just reality. So I think a lot of times startups are not going into those type of businesses just because it's either you have to have the money. So people like Mrs. Fonke from Main One, she had to raise like hundreds of millions of dollars to do what she needed to do as far as broadband internet. And she's just one of many people who are trying to get into that business. Even Wi-Fi.com, they raised about over $2 million, and they're still, at the infancy stage. And so they're really going to need a lot of money to really solve those big problems. And unfortunately, it's just not as easy to raise that capital, at least off the bat, especially as a first-time entrepreneur, because they want to see track record. But that's not to say that all of us are not building, real issues, real problems. Because, I have companies every day coming to me. Some of these companies are big organizations that you think would have an HR system and they don't. So you'd be really surprised that, all of what we're doing here are solving real problems for real SMEs that are here in Nigeria.
So I think Chika sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of the capital requirement to start some of these businesses. And, and it's not like some people are not working on them. So we've got an application, so people are trying to figure out, solutions to power. And we are looking at those businesses, or somebody who's figuring out how to deliver content or internet over sort of like, low signal Wi-Fi. And so the people who are trying to sort of solve some of these infrastructural challenges, but, it's really hard. And maybe maybe there are not a lot of people with those interests or like the skill sets to go after some of those problems, but some people are working on it. But like when you look at Nigeria and Africa, there's so many problems to be solved, and it's really impossible to build a startup that's going to be worth millions and $1 billion if you're not solving a real problem. That's just the bottom line. So every single person who's building a startup, especially locally, and is venture funded, has raised some kind of financing, is definitely solving a hard problem because capital here is really expensive and it's really hard to raise. So.
Okay, guys. I know there are a lot of hands, a lot of questions, but we'll just take one more question for young gentlemen here, and then you can meet with each of the panelists to ask them more questions afterwards.
Yeah, my name is Muswell. I want to ask a question. Like, when you are pitching to foreign investors, how local can you go? For instance, food is a major problem in Nigeria. So can you start pitching on yam, cassava, rice, or pitching on things like poultry, cattle? There are major problems in our country. So how local can you go? So another question is that when you are pitching, and for instance, you have a major problem with power issue. So maybe you have an idea on creating solar panels. So how big can you dream? Like, how big can you give the idea? Okay, I need like maybe $500,000. So how big, like for startups, how big can you pitch your ideas? Like, do you have a limit of amount you can, as there's a limit of amount you can ask investors, or you can just dream no matter how big it is? So this is how much I want.
Okay.
So my third question. I'm sorry. Yeah, my third question. Building trust with investors and customers, audiences. How do you go about it? Like, just hints. How do you go about them?
Okay. Let me start with the second question. Like, you can ask an investor for any amount of money. You can come and say, I want to raise $1 million, $2 million, $500 million. Your business just has to back up what you're asking for. So I always tell people, I'm like, at 15K, I'm looking for a lot less, right? Like, I'm just looking for a solid team, an MVP, a very big market. At 50K, like, I'm really looking for a little bit more. So I want, a little bit of traction. So we call micro traction. When you're raising $1 million or you're doing Series A, there's a whole different level of like due diligence and things that has to come into play. So the amount of money you want to ask is really dependent on what your business is. And if your business does not back it up, you're not going to waste that money. In terms of trust, I think, like, if I was starting a business, start with customers that you know, and then get them to build or to give you like testimonials about like, what your startup does. And as you get more businesses on board, you can sort of use numbers. So for instance, let's say Shola was starting Paystack, and they're like, my God, this guy like 419. And Shola was like, wait, we have 100 businesses using Paystack today. We have 200 businesses, and then Shola gets a big company like, I don't want to mention names, like what? Like Printivo, people know Printivo, and he puts Printivo's name on his website. And as you scale up, you then have a lot of those guys, and then if you've been covered by, let's say The Guardian or CNN or BBC or TechCrunch, then you put them as well. So trust is sort of like a gradual process. The more you make progress on your company, you will get trust. And then your Yeah, what was the question? There's a first one or something.
How local can you go?
How local can you go? Like, I don't know, I keep using Shala's example a lot. But, you know, when you read sort of like his application to YC, you understand, you see like they ask sort of like follow-up questions, trying to understand the market. And so with Microtraction, I've gotten a bunch of applications from entrepreneurs in Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, and I've been able to understand firsthand how hard it is to invest in markets outside of your own. And I'm Nigerian and African. And so as an entrepreneur, what you really want to do is to really explain and give enough context about the problem you're solving and the market you're in. However, like Chika said, it has to be a problem that is, you know, faced by loads of people. So it can't just be, you know, a problem for a small subset of people in Jigawa or something like that. That market size is not big enough to be venture backable. So give enough context on so that people understand the problem you're solving and the market you're in, but that market still has to be big and viable for it to be venture backable.
How big can you dream? Anybody else?
Dream big, like as big as possible. Like I keep saying as an investor, I'm not trying to sort of, you know, limit my downside, but I'm trying to maximize my upside. So I want companies that have the potential to be really, really big. So dream as big as possible, but then back your dreams with action and execution.
Okay, so how do you build trust with investors? I think that was the last question, right? With investors.
So I think another strategy that we really haven't spoken about is warming up the investors. So I think a lot of times it's even good to, you know, if you know 6 months to a year in advance that you're looking to raise capital, start like, it's like dating, really, to be honest. Is you take them out, you go to coffee, you do drinks, whatever, and you just like get them to know you. Because also, even here as local investors, they also want to know you as a person. And it's even more so here, like, I want to know you, I want to know where I can catch you, you know. So I think it's important to, you know, start going out with them, talking to them. Like, for example, there was an investor that she's not ready to invest today because she's still raising her own fund, but she made it clear, you know, that, oh, when I'm looking to invest in startups that want to raise 5 million upwards. I said, okay, this is someone I need to be in contact with because we'll be there down the road, you know, and she's someone I can, you know, from time to time, I send updates, which is another key thing, send updates, even if the investor said no that first time, or I'm not ready, you know, you can send a very nice infographic, PDF, giving updates. Oh, we now grown from, you know, 1 to 50, you know, companies over this period of time. And that also shows like, okay, these people are serious and we're seeing progression over a period of time. So definitely some investors, you can just have a conversation right away. They're like, okay, I'm ready to write a check. But some, you know, really need time to warm up to it. And it's going to, you know, take, you know, weeks or months on time. I definitely think you should just take that approach as well as building trust.
I think no one can doubt numbers. One of the biggest trusts you can get, what you can use to get an investor's trust is your number. When the traction is there, and no one can doubt numbers. Also, I've learned that people invest in people they know, or people that know people they know, because should in case something happens, or at least the people just want that little validity about you. Sometimes you've had the meeting, you discuss the numbers and everything, but someone still goes back to do background checks on you and do his due diligence and call a couple of investor friends and say, this guy, do you know this guy? So build a strong network. Founders to founders, build a very strong network within founders. I mean, I've had instances where someone wants to put money and they call me and they say, this guy, we're about to send him a term sheet. I know you know him, what do you think? And people have called me to say, hey, this guy called me to ask about you. You know, so it's I mean, I remember before we applied for 500 startups, long before we even applied for 500 startups, you seated here, you did an email intro to it. And as at that time, we've not even applied to 500 startups. And I spoke with Betty and we got on the call, and we got on Skype, and we spoke just for speed. So by the time your business gets in front of that person, he's not seeing you as a founder for the first time. It's not seeing your business as a business for the first time. All these things are part of the little building blocks that build trust. But like I said earlier, no one can build numbers.
Okay, thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Guys, there's so much to look forward to this week. So guys, I think we're going to give them a round of applause. Thank you guys again for sharing all of that knowledge. You guys are the trailblazers, right? And we want to see so many more people come and showcase, right, more of what Africa and Nigeria can be. All right? Thank you again. Okay, so we'll just call up Olumide quickly just to tell us about the rest of the week. Thank you very much, guys.
Just to give you a breakdown of the week itself. Tomorrow we'll be having more master classes, writing function 1, which cuts across from the art of photography to UX product development, and a masterclass session by RDN himself. On Wednesday, there'll be no events happening yet. We'll be having an Agri-Tech Summit happening at the Staffson Innovation Hall in the mainland of Bagada. Instructions or an email will be sent. We're having a class president there. So Staffson is a new hall, about 10,000 square meters. But I'm sure once you get there, you'll show yourself. Then on Thursday, we have like a breakout. On Wednesday, we also have the travel and tourism events at the entertainment at Shadia Pablo Agriculture Consult between the hours of 12 and 2 at the Nigerian Railway Station itself. So the goal is to, because Wednesday apparently is the World Tourism Day. So we'll be doing something with tourism at the Jekyll House itself. And on Thursday, we have events scattered across town because the goal is to get at least the hubs to host one community-led event of the itself. So we have events from Start Zone, even small sessions here by one of our sponsors, Bauno and Udalo, hosting a little session. And we'll also be having a fintech officer by ASEAN also happening here. Then on Friday, which is like a major day, more or less like a detailed e-commerce and meet the investors day. So we're having about 5 to 6 investors, coming by to talk about the criteria for investment. And on Saturday, we're having the Silicon Africa Drinks meet up in Bagada Statu, and also the Forum Developers Conference. So that's just the breakdown of what is happening the whole week. It's a whole lot to think about 50+ events. But please check out your emails for updates in terms of which are that and with time changes. At least you send an email the morning before the event so you can plan your calendar. Thank you very much for your patience and your time.